got you a lawyer. Is he good? Now, what's my name?
Your Honor, allow me to fumigate my wisdom on the defendant.
Mo Money dropped in 1992, giving us comedy, romance, a little action, and a lot of credit card fraud. We've got two brothers trying to survive day by day, one desperately sticking to the scams, the other just trying to survive his 9-to-5 from hell, and somehow both getting caught up in a deadly scheme. Rewatching this now, it's wild to see how fast things escalated from harmless scamming to high-speed chases, shootouts, and people getting knocked off over Dynasty club cards. But that's the magic of 90s movies. Everything could go from zero to felony in under 2 hours. So with that being said, while watching Mo Money, I noticed some things, and I have my thoughts. But before we get to that, it's time to recap. So let's get into it. First things first, the music in this film is so good. The soundtrack of this movie was produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis, so you already know the vibes. New Jack Swing coded. But in the first scene of this movie, we see this guy driving, minding his business until two cars drive by recklessly. Before he knows it, he stops his car to avoid the same two vehicles, not knowing that he set himself up to be rammed by this truck. If that wasn't bad enough, after the drivers of those two cars realized that he was still alive, one of them snapped his neck and took a computer tape from him while switching it out with another. And we'll meet this guy later. We fast forward to Seymour leading this guy up a million flights of steps to give him the TV he sold him. Fearing that Seymour would run away with the $300 he had given him for the TV, he wouldn't let him out of his sight. When they make it to the apartment, we meet our main character, Johnny, as he pretends to be a bum with a substance problem. As this guy waits to get his TV, Johnny pretends to overdose to run this guy off. But unfortunately, the guy discovers pretty quickly that he got. And this is what Johnny and Seymour do to survive. They get over on the unsuspecting and pull quick schemes to make a quick buck. They're usually pretty good at it too. But this time, they get caught by an undercover cop. While Johnny and Seymour got a head start with getting away, Johnny eventually gets caught as he gets on the subway.
Your fare! Pay your fare! Pay your fare! Pay your fare! Comb your hair!
So, Johnny gets arrested. He meets some interesting characters while he's waiting to be released, including this guy.
Give me a cigarette, boy.
Said I don't smoke.
You're supposed to say, I'll get you one.
He was saved just in time by Seymour, who visits him. He tells Johnny that he found him a lawyer, and he insists that this lawyer was A1.
Got you a lawyer. Is he good? Now, what's my name?
Your Honor, allow me to fumigate my wisdom on the defendant.
Johnny's case ends up getting dismissed. He gets a visit from Lieutenant Walsh. Lieutenant Walsh tries to talk some sense into him. He tries to encourage him to get a job and make an honest living, but Johnny didn't want to hear that. Johnny's father used to be a cop, and Lieutenant Walsh was his father's partner, so he wanted to look out for Johnny and Seymour. Lieutenant Walsh visits the Dynasty Club. This is where the guy who was killed at the beginning of the movie worked. Walsh was investigating his murder. He asked Tom some questions about the company. Dynasty Club developed AI to determine credit approvals. He asked Tom for a printout of the names on their computer tape. We go back to Johnny, who attempts to make an honest living by selling children's books, but he took the same approach to selling the books as he did everything else. It wasn't the best approach, but things take a turn when he meets Amber. Now, Miss Stacey Dash is... Child, we won't even start, but we must acknowledge that it has always been in the contract. Yes, it has. Unfortunately. Anyway, Johnny flirts with Amber and ends up getting a sale. He follows her to Seymour's table and helps her win against his brother. Seymour played along, but when Amber walked away...
How are you doing, Casanova? You sold me out for a piece of ass? Sell those books. Sell some books.
And it wasn't until he saw Amber and where she worked, ironically at the Dynasty Club, that he got the courage to seek that honest living. Not for himself, but to get closer to Amber. He quickly puts in an application and lands an interview the same day. When Johnny told Seymour that he may have landed a job, he wasn't happy.
You get a number?
No, just think I might have got a job.
Johnny, a job ain't nothing but work.
The guys needed a meal, so they had to pull out another trick out of their endless bag. Johnny pretended to be disabled while Seymour posed as the overwhelmed caretaker.
Fix him a turkey sandwich. He needs lactate. Accident. No, lactate. Get him out of my store.
Walsh learned that the murder victim's neck was snapped after the accident, so now he had evidence to dig deeper into the Dynasty Club. Since Johnny didn't have a home phone, he had to give the interviewer a number to a payphone. He sat outside for 2 days waiting for the call, and it wasn't in vain. He got the job. He met Chris, his supervisor, and his new work wife, whether he liked it or not, Charlotte. Johnny will be working in the mailroom, so Chris showed him what he'd be doing. We learned that these Dynasty cards come pre-approved and they had to be processed before they were canceled. He also meets Keith, Chris's boss, and Charlotte wasted zero time trying to get to know Johnny.
What are you doing for lunch?
Working.
On who?
We learned quickly that Keith isn't as friendly as he seemed. Keith was the same guy who snapped old boy's neck from the beginning of the movie. He jacked poor Chris up to remind him to stick to the program. Chris was afraid since he didn't know their scheme would get people hurt or even murdered. After Keith left the bathroom, Johnny walked in and heard him having a nervous breakdown. But Chris lied and said he was constipated to get Johnny to leave him alone. It didn't take long for Johnny to find Amber and try to flirt. But unfortunately for him, Amber already had a man. Not that was going to stop her. After work, Charlotte tried to kick some game to Johnny, but it was still a hard pass since he only wanted Amber. And Tom stood in the way of that with his uptight ass.
You really shouldn't waste your time talking to street trash, Amber.
What, are you jealous?
That's absurd. Just don't talk to him.
So Johnny continues working, Keith continues watching him, and Johnny continues watching and flirting with Amber and actively avoiding Charlotte. Ironically, Tom and Amber and Seymour and Johnny ate at the same restaurant for lunch one day. While Tom tried to tell Amber a joke that wasn't funny at all, Amber was more tuned into Johnny and Seymour's antics behind him. When Tom saw who really had her attention, he stepped up to Johnny and Seymour and caused a scene.
Why am I being so insecure? He can't afford you, right, Amber?
This leads to Amber breaking up with Tom, and honestly, it was for the best.
I want out of this
Fine.
relationship.
Just collect your things and go back to the projects.
Later, while Johnny was home, still reeling about the fight, he realized that he had to increase his income to get a girl like Amber, and thus, a plan was hatched. Remember those pre-approved cards? He began pocketing them. Walsh came to the Dynasty Club to question Chris, who was hesitant to talk to him. Keith tried to come across as friendly and innocent, but after everyone left for the day, Keith pulled Chris into his office to ensure that Chris didn't snitch. Chris insisted that he didn't tell Walsh anything. We go back to Johnny and Seymour pulling another scheme and scam. They used one of the Dynasty cards to score some jewelry. And let's just say their method was creative.
Anyway, why don't you just read it?
Certainly. 06913DICK.
They went on to have a shopping spree sponsored by the Dynasty Club. We fast forward to Johnny coming to Amber's apartment pretending to be Tom.
I've got a joke for you. What does a man with a 1-inch penis have for breakfast? Baby food and therapy. Lots of it. Keith Hadding told me that joke.
And they, well.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Chris's time was up. While in the subway station, he met his demise, and you already know who was behind it. The next day, Keith pulled Johnny into his office and confronted him about the stolen cards. Turns out, he'd been watching him the whole time and knew he was on probation, and was responsible for hiring him.
I do my affirmative action bit.
Keith wanted Johnny to bring him a list of names. When Johnny returned to his work area, he learned that Chris had been killed the night before. Shortly after, Keith came in and announced that Chris had passed away and that Johnny will be the new supervisor. Later that night, Johnny told Seymour that he didn't want to work for the Dynasty Club anymore. Seymour didn't want him to quit. He wanted to score more free designer fits. Walsh questioned Keith again. He told Keith that he had some Dynasty Club card receipts, but ironically, the owners of the cards were all deceased. So now he wanted to know, how were dead people shopping? Keith pretended to be clueless and even insisted that Chris was behind it all. We fast forward to Johnny meeting Keith. He provided him with the cards from the list he had given him earlier. When Johnny tried to give him the cards and leave, Keith insisted that he'd stay and help him. Turns out Keith had a whole credit card criminal enterprise going on. Keith pressured Johnny to not rock the boat, and that's what he did for the time being. So Johnny lived lavishly for a few weeks, even had the time and funds to court Amber and spoil her. And they found some more time to, well,
yeah.
And he even gets Seymour's teeth fixed. Around this time, Seymour started complaining about Johnny and him not spending time together. So when Johnny and Amber was set to go to a club, he invited Seymour to tag along. And he even promised to set him up with a cutie.
Okay, she's got a sister look just like her.
Wait, let me get dressed. You sure these two are sisters?
I told you, they got different fathers, man.
Father Godzilla?
Stop.
And they have a time. Well, Johnny and Amber have a time. Seymour spends the majority of the night ducking and dodging Charlotte. But after a couple of drinks, Charlotte didn't seem so bad.
I'm gonna rock your world.
I heard that.
Amber confronts Johnny about his sudden boost in spending for the last couple of weeks. Johnny tells her that he's doing it for her, but Amber tells him that he doesn't have to do so much. The next morning, when their liquor wore off, Seymour realized what he'd done, who he'd done it with, and he needed to clear his conscience and space immediately.
Fire, Charlie! Fire! What?
This not funny. How am I supposed to get home? $2.
Take the train!
Seymour found Johnny's Dynasty club card in the kitchen, and you can just about guess what he was about to do. Seymour tried to buy a 5-finger ring, and unfortunately for him, the card was flagged as stolen. Some detectives interrogated him about Johnny. He tried to play it cool at first, but in the end, he sang like a damn canary. They attempted to mic him up and get him to talk to Keith to get him caught up. Let's just say it didn't work out for him.
I'm not trying to set you up. Don't you think the cops would be here right now with their guns out? Help!
Walsh was pissed when he found out about the amateur sting with Seymour that he didn't authorize. Meanwhile, when Johnny made it home, he noticed that men were walking around in his apartment, so he ran to Amber's. She told him to go to Walsh, but he didn't want to hear his mouth, so Amber insisted that they gather evidence. So she suggested that they go into the office so she could look in the system. But unfortunately for them, Keith had changed her access code. Same time, they noticed Keith and his men coming into the office with Seymour. Johnny sets up a distraction which allows Seymour to get away and allow Johnny to hem Keith up. Just as they were leaving the building, they ran into Walsh. While Walsh was scolding Johnny, Keith ran up, shot Lieutenant Walsh, and kidnapped Seymour. So of course, there was a car chase. Eventually, Seymour jumps out of the car with Keith right before Johnny spots Keith's car. Somehow, Johnny lands on top of Keith's car and manages to hold on for a bit before he flies off. Keith then chases him and tricks him into running into some equipment. Keith fakes as if he's dead and ends up shooting Johnny. He runs out of bullets before he can shoot him one last time. Johnny is able to put up a fight and hold him off, and eventually, he managed to tangle him in some rope and hang him. We fast forward to Seymour visiting Johnny in the hospital. Seymour insists that they sue the Dynasty Club and get some money, but Johnny wasn't with any more schemes. Amber tells Seymour that he needs to settle down, and they've got the perfect person for him.
I know a girl. She cute? Now, what's my name?
Seymour!
Yeah, I got you some flowers, baby.
Well, I got something for you, too.
Now, he should have known better. But yeah, that was the end of the movie, and here are my final thoughts. This movie came out when I was pretty young, and honestly, I haven't revisited it much as an adult, so rewatching it felt like experiencing it for the first time all over again. And first things first, their soundtrack, still everything. Anything produced by Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis is always a vibe and so nostalgic. I feel like they, along with Teddy Riley, own the New Jack Swing era, and it takes me back to childhood. Now, Johnny and Seymour, lazy as hell. Their dad, who was murdered on the job, was a cop and clearly a solid role model, and they still had Lieutenant Walsh looking out for them. Yet, instead of trying to get an honest job, they acted like clocking in somewhere was selling their souls. The only real motivation Johnny had to even attempt a legit hustle was to impress Amber, not to better himself, not to support his brother, not even to secure his own basic needs, strictly for a woman. And let's be real, the man got an interview and a job offer on the same day. If that's not proof he could have done it all along with minimum effort, I don't know what is. And it was a decent job too, criminal activity behind the scenes aside. But instead of focusing on work, Johnny spent most of his time flirting, chasing Amber, and creating a hostile work environment for everyone involved. Meanwhile, poor Chris was dealing with his boss from hell, and Charlotte was out here making HR's non-existent job a nightmare. Speaking of Amber, how did she end up with Tom in the first place? I know opposites attract, but he was manipulative, insecure, and just an overall jerk. And don't even get me started on Keith's whole credit card scheme. How were these dead people cards letting Johnny buy designer suits, a Range Rover, and $1,000 jewelry? Were these no-limit platinum cards? Because if so, I've got questions. And poor Chris, he didn't even snitch and he still got taken out. Dirty game. All in all, More Money still holds up. It's funny, it's got charm, and like most 90s Wayans films, it's aged really well without feeling corny. But it's also a reminder of a timeless truth. Sometimes more money really does mean more problems. Anyway, that's it for this review. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. As for the next review,
all I'm going to say is it's time to discuss Being Mary Jane. All of Being Mary Jane episodes are available for free to watch on YouTube, so you have a week to catch up. See you next time, you guys. Bye!